Is it been just like such a change of pace coming back here now, leaving Iowa?
Well, certainly. You look at my life, 8 years as governor and then 1 year solid campaigning across the United States. So yes, driving back to Arkansas is wonderful, but also it's a change of pace, and a change of pace that is probably good for Susan and me. So excited about the next chapter. We just don't know what it is.
Yeah, that was my next question is, what do you think is next? Is it anything in politics?
Well, first, I am very concerned and invested in the presidential leadership in this campaign. And so right now, I've endorsed Nikki Haley. We'll see how far she can go, but hopefully she does well in New Hampshire. And then we'll see where I can be helpful to make sure we get the country turned around. But also, as everyone knows, I've spent 25 years in the private sector, and I've got a background in security. So I expect there'll be some opportunities that'll come around, and not in any hurry for those, but I do want to make sure I have some work in the private sector to replenish the till.
Would you consider working for Nikki Haley if, say, a cabinet position or anything like that came up?
Well, I'd want to help the team, but we're so far away from that. This is sort of a make or break what happens in New Hampshire. She's got to do well there. Trump, if he gets over 50%, it's going to be very hard to derail him during the rest of the campaign. And so this campaign started out with 16 candidates. You're down to really 2, and it's hard. Trump's trying to close the deal very, very quickly. And so let's see where that goes. But I'm hopeful that by the time it gets to Arkansas, there'll still be a race going on.
And you've been very vocal about your thoughts on Trump. What are some of your concerns right now?
Well, a couple things in reference to Donald Trump. I believe that character still counts in the White House. And I don't want someone motivated by revenge. I don't want someone that believes name calling is the routine of public service, and that name calling is part of our foreign policy and diplomacy. He takes our country back. And so that's my concern from just what he's going to be like if he's elected president again. Obviously, there's policy differences. He's added to our national debt. He wants to have a ring around America and get into tariff wars again that punish our consumers. But the big challenge is the fact that he continues to mislead. And whenever he says that January 6th was a patriotic act in our country and denies the fact that it was an attack on our police, attack on our rule of law, this is not the leadership that we need.
And now that the race is playing out as it is, but there's also court cases going on right now with Trump, and you have a background in politics, in law. Do you think that Trump will make it to the election, or do you think these legal cases will sort themselves out first?
Well, that's unknown. But I know that having worked in the criminal justice system, having been a federal prosecutor, that these charges are very serious, particularly at the federal level. And it's going to be hard to overcome that. And it's going to take an enormous amount of time and distraction. And in fact, he could be a convicted felon either before or after the Republican National Convention, which leaves our party in a terrible mess. And even though his loyal followers might continue with him even with a conviction, it almost makes it impossible for Republicans to win against Joe Biden. And that's a reality that's reflected in the polls, that he diminishes his support if he is convicted of a felony. And so what happens in those court cases, his strategy is to prolong them. He wants to wrap up this nomination as quickly as possible because he knows the spring and summer could be very, very bad for him.
Yeah, and in those same polls, while it did diminish his support, some voters don't care if he's convicted of a crime or not. And you call them followers. Is that a concern for you right now, of the energy surrounding that campaign?
Well, he has a lot of energy surrounding his campaign and a lot of loyalty. And also he controls the inner apparatus of the Republican Party. which means that the delegates that are elected to cast a vote for him are not going to waver from that, even if there's a felony conviction. And so that's going to make it very difficult to even change the circumstances if there's an adverse result in one of those trials. And so we could be plagued with a nominee that is also a convicted felon. And what does that mean for us in the general election? It doesn't mean anything good.
And you stayed in the race for a long time. What were some of your thoughts leading up to dropping out?
Well, and that is the good news, is that I survived 8 different candidates that dropped out, major candidates, and we were in the final 6. And so that's a good thing. Obviously, the tough message I had didn't resonate in Iowa, but probably my primary thought is, one, what an incredible experience I've had. And I think it was good for America. It was certainly good for me. And then secondly, the regret would be that I'm not in that battle later on, because just as I predicted, this field has narrowed so quickly, and it's a survival contest. And we need to have options that are there on Super Tuesday. Whenever they vote in Arkansas, that's a great regret that we don't have multiple candidates to choose from. It very well could be 1, or it could be hopefully 2. But that's a regret. But overall, it was just an incredible experience.
And tell me a little bit more about that experience. Most people have never run for president. They've never spent so long on a campaign traveling the country. What was that experience like for you?
Well, there's a reason a lot of people have to run for president twice, because there's a lot of mistakes you can make along the way. And so it's a tremendous learning curve, because there's no other race like that. Not governor, not senator, you're running for president of the United States. It's extraordinarily expensive and complicated. Just getting on the ballot in 50 different states is very expensive. And then whenever you look at running for president, it's the history of the moment. I'm on the debate stage with 7 other candidates, and as somebody who loves politics, that's pretty extraordinary, with 12 million people listening to our debate. Whenever you look at the fact that in New Hampshire, I was on the same platform speaking to an audience that Abraham Lincoln was on in 1860, whenever he was starting his race for president. So the history of the moment is extraordinary, and the importance of it, talking about the future of our country, was really important to me.
And you endorsed Sarah Huckabee Sanders when she was running, or becoming, the Arkansas governor, and she was on Face the Nation the other day talking about, her support for Donald Trump. If you follow those lines, some people who don't maybe know politics wouldn't understand why. How does politics kind of complicate things like that, where it overlaps?
Well, sure. I mean, we all it's a small state. We all have good relations with each other, but we might go different directions. And I understand her loyalty to Donald Trump. She worked for him in the White House. And so I understand and respect that, but I come down a different direction on that. So that's the beauty of politics. We can disagree without demeaning each other, and we all pull for the best outcome for our country.
And what are your feelings on the current race right now? I know you said you wanted more options, but are you worried for what's to come?
Oh, I am worried for what's to come, because if Nikki Haley can't be competitive in New Hampshire, she's going to have a lot of pressure to drop out, and we'll see if she's got the toughness and the resources to continue on. But hopefully she will do well in New Hampshire. Hopefully my endorsement made a difference up there. And so the key is probably keeping Donald Trump down below 50%. And if that happens, then Nikki Haley ought to stay in the race and compete when it comes to Super Tuesday, and showcase the fact that she's a governor, that she's survived this field of candidates and is still competing.
When you were on the trail, did you talk to so many voters? Did any of them have questions for you that were based on, for lack of a better word, fake news, for things that they maybe misunderstood? Did you run into a lot of that where, I remember when I was on the campaign trail, I would talk to a voter and say, do you believe in this issue? And they might not know the issue, but they knew they were voting for that person. Did you run into a lot of that, or do you think this is more an issue-based election?
Well, first of all, as I campaign through Iowa and New Hampshire, I get asked very substantive questions from border security policy to what we're going to do about Ukraine and support for Israel. And so very, very detailed, informative questions that are asked. And then you also get some misinformation that's out there, and largely it's information that they would get off the internet, or it's just misleading information from a leader of the party. And so, whenever you're looking at some of the charges against Donald Trump, for example, somebody said, well, he's got a favorable, he's got an adverse judge, he's got an adverse place, he can't get a fair trial in Florida. Well, that's because he says he can't get a fair trial, but the fact is, it's a judge that he appointed, and it's where he lives, so it's a very favorable jurisdiction to him. And so, that's an example of where there's extraordinary loyalty. They hear what they want to hear, and they really don't dig deeper into the facts.
And I don't think we've ever seen that really in politics much before.
Well, the difference today is that we've always had division in our country. We've had times of division, the Civil Rights era and the Vietnam War, but we've had leaders that tried to bridge the gap and bring people together. And regretfully today, we have leaders that capitalize on division, that they divide further rather than trying to bring people together. And that's a struggle we have, and that impacts the average citizen, because they don't see things working in Washington. They lose respect and they get frustrated with the whole system.
And I know that you tweeted that the White House called you after the DNC's comment. What was your reaction when you saw it? To me, it seemed almost after the fact, the whole thing.
Well, first of all, it surprised me that the Chief of Staff of the White House called me to apologize, because I've been insulted before in politics, and rarely does anybody call up and apologize for it. But then, to me it was a private conversation, but then they released it to the White House press corps, which became a big national story. And I think it reflects actually a good moment in our politics, that there was bipartisan pushback saying, don't go there. That was wrong what happened. And then whenever the apology came and my response to it, I think it did bring people together for a moment whenever I said it's okay to disagree without demonizing. And I disagree on President Biden's policies, but doesn't mean that we can't have a personal relationship with the Chief of Staff of the White House, or we don't recognize the human element of things, that let's treat each other with dignity. And that crossed the line, what happened with the DNC, and they apologized for it.
And for voters who might be watching who are saying, I don't want a rematch of Trump and Biden, or what's the point of voting? We're seeing all these polls. What kind of is your perspective as someone who was in the race so long on voters, on their vote?
Well, I always thought we'd move away from Donald Trump and Joe Biden. But here, the American public are clear they don't want that rematch. But the fact is, what are the two political parties going to give the American public? And right now, they're the two front runners. And so it speaks poorly of the two major political parties that we're giving America what they don't want. And we'll see if that changes, but that's the risk to the political parties and to our political system. People are going to be frustrated. They'll stay home with that kind of a rematch, and nobody knows the outcome. And particularly with the young people. The young people came up to me and they said, what hope do we have when this is what we see? Where's our voice? And so we need to give them better opportunities and choices.
Do you think there needs to be a change to the political system?
The two-party system is ingrained into America, but there can be a lot of lessons learned, and we can take a downturn before we restore to normalcy. And so the question is, this year, are we going to get it right before we actually put these two names forward that no one wants to have a rematch, or are we going to get it fixed earlier? And I hope we get it fixed earlier. Otherwise, we're going to go through another 4 years of discontent in America.
Are you going to be an active member of the campaign trail, for Nikki Haley as needed? Can we expect you at any future events or any other political rallies as we get closer to Election Day?
Well, I'm all in for Nikki Haley, and so if there are opportunities, I'll be there. I mentioned South Carolina, where I went to college, is a good place for me to campaign. So we'll see. She's got to survive. She's got to be strong, be able to make it to Super Tuesday. So hopefully she will. We'll find out tomorrow night.
On the trail online, everyone gets insulted. What do you speak to that experience, or to people who maybe are making those comments? Do you think that needs to change?
Whenever you see the coarseness of American politics today and our social engagement, it starts with leadership, and it starts with individual responsibility as well. Everybody has to take ownership of it. And somehow we've got to recognize we're all humans, and that nobody has anonymity to say what they shouldn't say. And so to me, it's individual responsibility, but it's also the leadership. We've had an example set over the course of the last 7 years that's not good for America. Name calling. If a candidate for President of the United States can engage in demeaning name calling, does that mean it's fair game for everyone? I hope not. And we need to turn back from that kind of dialogue.
And I think something interesting too is when you endorse a candidate, when someone endorses a candidate, it's not you had your own campaign. So obviously there's not every single issue, but it's again that same theory of supporting someone else within the party, right? Something that similar beliefs that you think is a good fit for the country.
Sure, I've spent the last 3 months making my case that I'm different than Nikki Haley and that we disagree on some issues and my ideas are better. But she beat me. She outpolled me, she outperformed, and so obviously she's got a lot of support out there. And so I shift directions and say, she's the best option that we have for our country right now. And so I have no problem with doing that. We disagree on some things, but she's got tougher and tougher on Donald Trump as she got closer to the finish of this campaign, and she's taken it right to him, as she needs to do whenever she's running against him. And so hats off to her for how she's performed in the debates and how she has generated the support. So I want to do what I can to make sure she's successful.